Couple of things. His books are on the table here. Colonel Doc, as he is known, is a noted author of 5 different books. His most recent, which you can get here, is called Radical Islam and War with the World. He's a distinguished speaker, a West Point graduate, dedicated military officer, and with that, I present Colonel Richard Hobbs, or Colonel Doc.
Thank you very much. Delighted to be here. The last time I had the pleasure of being here, we were talking about death by 1,000 cuts, but now we have a new book, Radical Islam at War with the World, which seems more appropriate for the area. If we could, Bill, get to the things, get to number 5 quickly. Number 5. These are the parts of the book. Next. Okay, there, your Middle East. The trouble with the Middle East, it has more history than it can absorb. It goes on and on. Next. No. The Fertile Crescent, the cradle of civilization, way, way back in history. Next. The Persian Empire. So the Persians moved out and ran the whole area, 500 BC. Next. Then you get a guy coming out of Greece, Macedonia, Alexander. He takes it all the way to the Hindu Kush and goes in the other direction. Next. Then you get the Roman Empire from 500 BC to the 1st and 2nd centuries, and you see by the 1st and 2nd centuries that they are in Syria and Mesopotamia, in the area we're talking about today. Next. The Persian Empire and the Byzantine Empire. Next. The importance of this is that this area where they are constantly fighting, right there, you look, this is Iraq nowadays. They fought so long, they wore each other out, and they both basically withdrew from this area. Next. So we get a new player in, the Bedouins coming out of the Arabian desert, and they didn't have much trouble taking over Damascus, Aleppo, and Antioch, and moving on up into what is now Iraq. Next. Their empire expanded with the first great jihad all the way across from the Atlantic to the Hindu Kush, and so that you have that area. That's the first great jihad. Next. We've talked about this before, the Sunni-Shia divide. The Sunnites are those who follow. This started the day that Muhammad died in 632 because there was no heir. No one could follow him as the head of the religion because he was the last prophet. But who was going to run the political side? Well, it had the choice between competence and hereditary. They went with competence with Abu Bakr. Those people became the Sunnites to follow the Sunnah. All the people who were following Ali, who was his cousin and son-in-law, thought that he should have been, and he thought he should have been the Caliph immediately, and they are the Shia or the Shiites. Next. This is the spread of these people around. You see heavy in Iran, Iraq. These are the Houthis down in Yemen. Next. After Genghis Khan came in and wiped out the city of Baghdad and ended the first great jihad, then his grandson Hugulu come over, and you'll see the part of the interesting thing is you'll note Constantinople is still not taken. It's not part of the first jihad. Next. We get the Ottoman Empire. Covers the whole area. Next. So this is what we have now. This is what we think of now with these artificial boundaries. Next. And these are the countries that we're dealing with. Next. Go back one. Syria, theoretically a country, but you have Shia, Alawites, Christians, Druze, Sunnis. A mess. Next. In Iraq, we have Kurds, Sunnis, and Shia. Again, theoretically a country. Next. Back one. That brings us then to our subject. And it starts with the American invasion of Iraq in 2003 and a thug who came out of the prison in Jordan by the name of Abu Musab al-Zarqawi. Nice guy. He'd been in Afghanistan, been in the mountains of Iraq. He arrived in Baghdad with a bundle of money, and he went to work. Next. You were probably first introduced to him if you saw the video of him cutting off the head of Nicholas Berg. Very nice guy. He did that personally. In 2004, he sent a letter to Osama bin Laden and Al-Qaeda saying, oh, we can attack the Shiites, and that's how we get all the Sunnis supporting. Well, they didn't buy that too well, but Osama bin Laden did name him the emir of the land of the two rivers. That became Al-Qaeda in Iraq, and he boasted that he would undo Sykes-Picot. Next. This is in the middle of World War I, 8th of May, 1916. Two lower-level diplomats, Mark Sykes and Francois-Georges Picot, reneged on the promises of independence for the Arabs and divided up the area. And that's the Sykes-Picot line right there, which that is the current boundary of the southern boundary of Syria, except for this part up here because Winston Churchill had changed the navy to oil and he wanted Mosul. Next. Very interesting book by this guy, Fuad Hussein, in 2005. 6-phase plan, 20-year plan. Note the last two down there. 2011, bring down the secular Arab governments. That's sort of like the Arab Spring, the Arab Winter. And the next one, 2014, announce the caliphate. Next. Before the elections in Iraq in 2006, Zarqawi denounced democracy. So this shows you, it's also the Salafi philosophy. Look at some of these things. You don't need to read all of it. Obedience to man, not Allah. Freedom of religion, bad. People, freedom of expression, next. Separation of church and state, bad. Freedom of association, bad. Majority rule, bad, next. He got a reprimand from Ayman al-Zawahiri because he was killing too many Shiites. Well, the U.S. Air Force caught up with him with two 500-pounders on the 7th of June, 2006. Afterwards, they had to change the name, and they made it the Islamic State in Iraq. Bin Laden, the next month, called on his successor to establish a caliphate. Remember, this term caliph comes up often. Lots of the followers of Osama bin Laden called him the caliph. Next. That brings us to our new nemesis, Abu Bakr Al-Baghdadi. He was our guest for a few years at Camp Bucca before we, for some reason, turned him loose, but no one's explained yet. The next year, he was the head of ISI. The following year, he decided that insurgency in Syria was a great opportunity, so he took ISI into Syria, getting that fight. The next year, one of his deputies split with him and took part of him off and formed the Al-Nusra Front. And in 2013, he formed ISIS. Now you hear ISIS and ISIL. It's really Islamic State of Iraq and Al-Sham. Sham is the Levant, which is Syria and Lebanon. So it's all the same animal. And we got a $10 million bounty on his head. Next. That Sunni-Shia divide is now better described as hatred. I mean, those killings that you've been seeing are just ridiculous. There's our old buddy, Yusuf al-Qaradawi, the spiritual head of the Muslim Brotherhood in Egypt. And look what he tells them. Everybody's got to go to Syria if you know how to kill. Oh, okay, nice people. Alawites, that's Assad's group in Syria. They're worse than Jews and Christians. Well, Jews and Christians are pigs and apes. Alawites are even worse. That's interesting. And Hezbollah, the party of the devil. He got that one right. Next. Abu Bakr was born in Samarra, 1971, he was born Ibrahim Ali al-Bakri, also used the name Abadua, and he supposedly has a doctorate from Saddam Hussein University in Baghdad. He called himself Khalifa Ibrahim or Khalif Abraham. Next. Okay, now the ISIS was disavowed by Ayman al-Zawahiri in 2013 because they weren't taking orders from the guys in the hills in Pakistan. There are about 10,000 fighters, 7,000 in Syria, 3,000 in Iraq. About half of them are foreigners. Foreigners. He declared himself the Caliph, 29 June, and they even used that on their passports. Next. You'll notice where these are now. Raqqa up here is the headquarters, or the main place up there close to Aleppo, which is over here. Deir ez-Zor is down here. This is coming down the Euphrates. Mosul's up here coming down to Sea Creek, getting down close to Baghdad. Next. So now we have the beginnings of a new caliphate. Next. To give you some idea of these places and some of these, Anbar province, which is mostly desert. Next. This is the dream. There it is. A lot of it, you see the red part, that's because next. It's because of the rivers. Everything really goes along these two rivers, the Tigris and Euphrates. The part down to the south of them is desert. They go out there only when necessary. Next. So it's now more an irregular army, or as Brett McGurk at the State Department told the Congress a couple of weeks ago, it's a full-blown army. They're operating as a state. And the main part that's really important, they don't need Qatar or Saudi or anybody else for money. They are financially self-sufficient. Next. Well, when you establish a state, you can't just be a terrorist running around blowing people up. You got to do some work finally. Somebody's got to do something. You got to provide water, food, gasoline. Those Toyota trucks don't operate on air. Somebody has to bring gas to them. You got to move them around. Now, he paid or threatened mid-level people. This was people like they run their electricity, running the plants, running the dams, to stay, but he put in loyal supervisors over. He's even running tour buses into Iraq. They had one with a honeymoon on it. Next. The blue box reads the absent areas of president control of Sham. Those are the 16 wilayats. That comes back to the old Ottoman Empire. These are the districts, and they compare to the districts in the provinces that are in Iraq and in Syria. Next. So what is it? The Islamic State has weapons. They got them from the Iraqis and the Syrians. Personnel, fighter, leadership. Very, very organized. Very organized. Resources. $2 to $4 million a day coming in from the oil and from the rockets they're running, plus the taxes they put on people. They control territory, and they have the momentum to hold it up going now. Next. This is the new petrostate. They've got 60% of the Syrian oil capacity. There are about 80,000 barrels a day available. That means there's money coming in. What he's doing, he's sending the oil from Iraq back to Syria to be refined and bringing it back into Iraq. 4 small fields in Iraq, 2 near Mosul and 2 near to Crete. And the Baji refinery, which we'll see on another slide, they haven't destroyed it because they want it. It's interesting, China wants a solution because China is the biggest customer of Iraqi oil. Next. We got to get the ladies in here. Those are ladies, in case you missed it. This is the Qaeda Brigade. It's all females. These are the 4 stooges, but since women are only half of everything else, there are only 2 stooges up there. Next. This is the way women are treated. Isn't she a lovely guard? Oh boy. Next. The sex jihad. Mosul, they put out an order, bring all unmarried girls to have sex jihad for the warriors. Captured women become slaves. 50 were just sold yesterday or the day before, $150 a piece. 3,000 been captured in the last 2 weeks. Next. Oh, this is a jewel. I mean, we even have to veil the mannequins. Next. Now, Jonah, you might remember, that's Jonah. Jonah and the whale. It's in both the Bible and the Quran. That's where the mosque went, straight up. Next. They executed 13 Sunni imams, not Shia, Sunni imams, including the one where they were speaking, stoned women to death in Raqqa, and they've destroyed Shiite mosques and taken over a bunch of the cathedrals, which had turned them into mosques. Next. This is discouraging. This is a very, very professional 36-minute film that was released on the 28th of July. And the first 30 minutes are full of great propaganda, tanks and artillery and all this stuff. The last 6 minutes start with this group. This man here has just been shot. Those two are shot in the next scene. All these people are dead. The next scenes are a truckload of people with their men with their arms tied behind them. They're taken out into a field and then shot. Then the next series of pictures is a group one at a time, pulled up, shot in the head, and pushed in the river. No problem. Next. After Division 17 was secured, they put 50 soldiers' heads on stakes and on this fence in Raqqa. Next. Discouraging. This is a 7-year-old boy holding up a head, and his father says, "That's my boy." Next. Former British rapper, Barry. Everybody has to hold a head. That's the great thing. Next. Christians, next. There used to be 100,000 not too long ago, 5,000 in June, probably less than 200 now. On the 18th of July, they were given the order to convert, pay the jizya, or die. They didn't react fast enough, so they canceled the order and said, everybody out by noon tomorrow. And they were all out. Now, most of them tried to get to Kurdistan. When they left town, they hit checkpoints, and they took everything that they had of value away from them. And poor mothers, they even took the baby's diapers, took the baby's milk, and one mother asked, "Can I at least have water till we get to Kurdistan?" They took the water out and poured it on the sand. Good folks. Next. Oh, I didn't do one thing down there. That N stands for Nazarini, which is Nazareth, which is the symbol for Christians, and that has been put on the homes that they've kicked them out of. Now it says property of the Islamic State on a house with a big N on it written in Arabic. Syria, half of them displaced, crucified and beheading. Next. As you know, in Islam, there are only 3 choices. You convert, you become a dhimmi and pay the jizya, or you're dead. Now, Osama bin Laden put that out, but it's actually straight out of the Quran. Next. You've heard a lot about Sinjar in the last few days. We need to get on with the Kurds in Kurdistan and the Peshmerga, which is their military group. That's Sinjar and Sinjar Mountain. The Sinjar folks are Yazidis, which is another religious sect. Next. This is where the Kurds live. They live in Iran, Iraq, Turkey, and Syria. And they do not have their own country. Next. You heard about these 3 towns not too long ago, Sinjar, Zumar, and Wana, which were taken over because the Peshmerga got pushed out of them. You'll notice that the 2 little towns up there wasn't too hard for them to get into Kurdistan. But Sinjar, as you look at it, is about 30, 40 miles from Kurdistan. They're closer to Syria. That's why they had so much trouble. And also there's the Mosul Dam. Next. This is the most important dam in Iraq for water and electricity and irrigation. It was poorly designed. It was built on unstable earth. Even on its own, it might be breached. If it's breached, there would be about a 60-foot wave which would go down the Tigris all the way to Baghdad, and you could probably wipe out 500,000 or 600,000 people in one day. Next. You might remember hearing about these 2 towns up here, Mahmur and Guer, which were the IS was attacking into the Kurdish area. Then the president finally got around to doing something. We bombed them. The Kurds retook them on the 10th of August. They were retaken by the PKK, which is a real embarrassment, because the PKK comes out of Turkey. These are Turkish Kurds, and they are on our terrorist list. But they come in and liberated it. Everybody gets excited. The only thing to think about is that they have women with the Peshmerga. Okay, wonderful. That's Erbil, which is the capital, and the U.S. consulate is right there on the north side of town. Next. The oil fields. Oil, of course, is very important. Iraq is a major exporter. What's keeping the Kurds going is their oil, and this oil line from Baji up to Turkey has been intercepted quite a bit. So with the Turks, they have built a new line up through here, which goes up into Turkey, which they take over to Ceyhan on the Med, and it is exported, and that's how the Kurds are getting their money. Next. So there's your new caliphate. Next. But this is the world they see. It goes from old Andalus, Spain, all across Africa, over here. That is China. Xinjiang province in China with the Uyghurs. Next. What's the significance? It's been blacklisted by the UN. The UN is working on it. One thing about it is arms embargo, which we can talk about in the questionnaire. Trying to stop the foreign fighters. Next. Now, this is a speech that al-Baghdadi gave in July. All with this business of, we don't mind dying, you people would rather live. Well, good, let's help him. Anyway, he ended the speech with a very important statement. Islamic aspiration for conquest of Rome and the whole world. Straight out of the philosophy. Next. Do jihad. I'm the wali. I'm the leader. All Muslims should obey me. He has a very professional media outlet. As I mentioned to about that video earlier, boy, it is very professional. And during that video, they interview a Moroccan who's doing his spiel before he's going off to take a truck on a suicide mission. He shows you the explosive in his truck. Then he takes off and boom, blows his truck up. They show it on camera 1. They show it over again on camera 2. They show it over again on camera 3. Somebody's working pretty hard. They know what's going on. Next. We have a single war going. From Med to Iran, maybe on into Afghanistan and Pakistan. The question is, who's fighting? Well, everybody's fighting. Sunnis and Shia, the Saudis and the Iranians, Arabs and Persians, Islam and infidels, that's you. That's Islam against the rest of the world. But not one of them is fighting for democracy. Not one. They're fighting to impose Sharia. Next. There's your jihad. There's the objective of jihad. Reestablish the caliphate. Put in Sharia. Make Islam the only ideology. They like to say the only religion, but it's not a religion. It's a totalitarian ideology, the only ideology in the world. Next. I put this up only because Abdul Allah Maududi is considered to be the most prominent Islamic scholar of the 20th century. And he's telling you that the Islamic theocracy is the only acceptable form of government. Now this book, Let Us Be Muslims, can be found in almost any Islamic bookstore, including probably in Reno. Next. Foreign jihadis. We mentioned 5,000 with the Islamic State, 10 to 12,000 perhaps. They've got big recruiting after the American attacks. We've had the biggest recruiting week that they've had. 3,000 with European Western passports, 100 with American passports. Why is that important? They can get into Europe and they can get into the United States, in spite of TSA. They have French and German-speaking brigades. Next. A number of groups have joined up. A Salafi group in Jordan has sworn allegiance, another one in Sudan, a group in Libya. About 800 of the al-Nusra fighters have evidently joined up, and there is talk, and we've gotten reports of movement from AQAP. AQAP is Al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula. That's the group down in Yemen. And AQIM is Al-Qaeda in the Islamic Maghreb. That's in Algeria and Mali. They talk about moving some of these people in there. And they're tweeting in Spain now about, oh man, we're going to get Andalus back. Everybody from Osama bin Laden has always said, we've got to come back to Andalus. That's the great dream because they lost Spain. Why? Ferdinand and Isabella kicked them out. 1492. Next. Look at this communique from AQAP in Yemen. It's exactly what we're talking about. Especially those who can enter the West. Those are the guys with those passports. Fight the U.S. Next. There is opposition. The fighting in Syria is the craziest war you've ever seen. There's more people fighting each other than fighting against Assad. They're busy fighting. Everybody's killing everybody else. They're having fun. There are various Sunni groups in Iraq. Why did the Sunnis join up with IS when they came into Mosul? Because they disliked Maliki and the Shia who've been dumping on them ever since Maliki took over. The tribes are the key. There have been feelers out this week of the tribes trying to talk with the government saying, we don't like these idiots, let's talk. But you got to treat us a little better. Yusuf al-Qaradawi, Al-Azhar, that's the university in Cairo, which is the supreme place for Sunni Islam, if there is any such place. Saudi Arabia, scared to death. Muqtada al-Sadr, that's the Sadr brigades in Baghdad. He's back in there now. And Grand Ayatollah Sistani, he's the head of the Shiites in Iraq. And most of the governments. Next. Well, even Hezbollah doesn't like the Islamic State. The monster is growing and getting bigger. Next. Well, here's your new prime minister, Hyder al-Abadi. He has replaced Maliki. So he has to try to bring something together in Iraq. Terrific. Next. Here are some of your players. Ayatollah Khamenei in Iran, supporting al-Assad in Syria. Now supporting the Iraqis against IS in Iraq. King Abdullah, scared to death. He just moved 30,000 troops up to the border with Iraq. Emir Sheikh Ahmad bin Khalifa Al Thani, he's been the financial bagman for most of this for the years. Not sure which side he's on at the minute. And Recep Tayyip Erdogan, who is busy screwing up Turkey, trying to take it back into an Islamic state after Ataturk. And he just got himself elected president now. He's like Vladimir Putin. He's gone from 3 terms as prime minister, now he's president. Next. Iran. They consider the Assad government legitimate, therefore everybody else is a terrorist. So they have been supporting Assad. He has pretty good control of these countries by proxy. This interesting guy, Qasem Soleimani, we've been fighting him for years. He has been beating on us in Iraq. He's the head of the Quds Force, which is part of the Revolutionary Guards Corps out of Iran. He has been defending this Shiite shrine in Samarra. And now they just love him. He's become a cult figure. The senior military commander says he's the best commander in the world. They're flying in equipment all the time. They just returned the Su-25 jets, which went out in 2003. They got a lot more Su-25s back in country. Next. Turkey. Erdogan initially supported Assad, but then he turned against him in 2012. And this organization, the IHH, has a $100 million budget. They've been supporting various insurgent groups. And his son, Bilal, is on the board. Always involved. Turkey cracked down on him early this year. And Davutoglu, who is perhaps going to be the next foreign minister of Turkey, defended the Islamic State and said it was all a part of the Syrian and Iraqi regimes. There's a very interesting thing about the Kurds. Erdogan has made a deal with the Iraqi Kurds. With that, the Kurds in Turkey have stepped down, turned off their war against them. They're dealing with Oklu, who's in the jail in Turkey. He's going to give them more autonomy, and he's basically accepting a Kurdish Turkestan. And he will accept all of the oil that the Kurds can export. So he's got a deal. Next. Bashar al-Assad, this statement is pure heresy. That's the end of Islam. You can't separate church from politics in Islam. Next. The Australian general, he's got it right. 100 Years' War. The only problem is we've already been in this war for 35 years. It started in 1979. Next. Significance. Lebanon, Syria, Iraq, Libya, gone. Lebanon, once Christian, now Shiite. Syria, balanced to Sunnis. Jordan, Palestine, Iraq. This is what Ambassador Ryan Crocker calls Iraq now. Shiistan, Jihadistan, and Kurdistan. Good old Ambassador Crocker. He's really got it. Next. Challenges. This is the first terrorist group to take on a war on two fronts. Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Dempsey. No precipitous military action. Secretary of Defense, Chuck Hagel. Oh, we got a major threat. Oh boy. Okay, next. This is the spokesman. Don't be cowards. Don't attack us with drones, you chickens. Come out in the fight. Come out and fight. We'll stand behind the women. We will raise the flag of Allah in the White House, and we will take your blood. Oh, they've been putting out a lot of stuff this week. The U.S. may not be at war with the IS, but the IS is at war with us. Camp Boka, where I told you that Abu Bakr Al-Baghdadi was run by a National Guard outfit of a bunch of guys from New York Police Department and New York Fire Department. When Al-Baghdadi left, he said, "See you guys in New York. I'd be happy to take your questions." Next. Leave one of them, leave it up.
Hold on for a second. It's unbelievable. It's unbelievable what's happening in the world, and people better wake up, and we better get strong on this. I think Colonel Hobbs has done an excellent job of explaining it currently. Now we'll open it up for question and answers. We'll do it one at a time. Patty Vinicow, you're the first.
I've heard that the crescent.
Oh, hold on.
Oh.
Gary, can you help take a mic? Here. We got some mic.
Yeah. I heard that the crescent is only
Put a map up.
I heard that the crescent is only a crescent until world dominion of Islam, and then their crescent will turn into the full moon. Is that apocryphal, or is that something that is another of the intent?
What, that the...
Yeah, the emblem of the crescent moon to symbolize Islam is only a crescent until world dominion is achieved, and then they will portray it as the full moon. You have not heard? Okay.
You're way ahead of me on that one.
Okay, well, yeah, I've studied a lot of history.
That's a beautiful one. That's a beautiful one. I'll pass on it.
But thank you for your presentation. It was incredible.
Thank
and
you.
Learned a lot.
Here's one over here.
One at a time, please. We're missing two mics. That's what we're looking for.
They're over here. Yes, ma'am.
You have a wealth of information. When did you begin this in-depth study? How long have you been working on this? Because it's
55
amazing.
years.
Wonderful. Wonderful to have you.
No, well, no, it's a good question. I started out when I was sent to the British Jungle School in Malaya in 1958. So that's a couple years ago. And then Vietnam, of course, I was in Southeast Asia. When I came out of there and Southeast Asia didn't exist anymore, I was in the Pentagon, and we were working on the Middle East, and then we had the Arab-Israeli War in 1973, and that's when I went to the State Department. I was in the Middle East Bureau, political military advisor, Middle East Bureau. When I retired, then I worked mainly in the Middle East because I happened to have contact with the Minister of Defense of Egypt, who had been the attaché in Washington. So
Thank you for all your work.
thank you.
What does the next 10 years look like to you?
Sir?
What does the next 10 years look like to you?
constant fighting. Constant fighting. It won't be over anytime soon. They do have vulnerabilities. I mean, they don't have that nice jungle canopy of Vietnam to hide behind, and they don't have an air capability, but they have determination. They're willing to die. We should help them. And they're organized. The organization is fantastic. I mean, they're already putting out reports, bad as the Pentagon. You know, they got reports of how they did last year, and they did one the year before. They're already putting out reports. So I don't know how long it's going to last, but you know, we're already 4 years and 3 years in Syria and in that mess. So I don't see it ending anytime quickly. Yes, ma'am.
Well, I've noticed that President al-Maliki has been kind of held up as the bad guy here with his lack of wanting to have a healthy relationship with Sunnis. But if you step back behind that, the Sunnis and the Baathists were the party of Saddam Hussein and tortured to death hundreds of thousands of Shia and Iraqis. So you have an issue right there where there's already a lot of bad blood, and Maliki couldn't have done half of what had been done in the past. So what sort of negotiation is going on? Because obviously the Sunnis and the Ba'athist party really shouldn't be in bed with ISIS.
You raise a good point as to the Sunni-Shia divide, and you better throw in the Kurdish divide also in Iraq. But the difference in that is, I think, and that's one of the lessons we fail to learn, is when you encourage overthrowing governments, sometimes you get something that's worse than what you had. Saddam Hussein was a bum, but I like to compare him to Tito in Yugoslavia. Yugoslavia fell apart when Tito went, because he kept them together. The minorities had a better deal in Iraq under Saddam Hussein, the Christians, the Jews, Kurds, and even the Shia, than they have now. So we've made it worse. Now, Maliki made it worse again because, understandably, he took revenge. But he messed it all up because he took out the major commanders of the military and put in his flunkies. And so the military, when they went into Mosul, they just said, we're not going to fight for these idiots. We're out of here. And they all ran. So putting it back together is going to be very difficult. I don't think Iraq will ever be put back together. I think it is 3 countries now. And so the Sunni-Shia hatred now is so intense. When you see IS going into a town and just starting killing people, just kill them. You got a guy who says, I killed a Shia, I killed a Shia. He's so damn happy, he's jumping up and down. I killed a Shia. Man, that's a mentality. That's a mentality. That help?
That helped. I'm going to cheat. Second question, when the Egyptian military threw out the Muslim Brotherhood, our government was not very pleased. It seems as though that President Obama was rather in support of the Muslim Brotherhood. What's going on there?
Well, I think you're right about Sheikh Obama, but I'm very much a supporter of General Sistani, al-Sisi. And I'm glad he threw the Brotherhood out. The Brotherhood was a bunch of hoods. We knew that. A government under the Secretary of State refused to face that. Morsi had an opportunity to really do something, but he blew it because he couldn't go slowly. He had to go too fast and try to impose his way all the way. Yes, please.
Colonel, I'm interested in knowing how we could pinch the money supply. It seems like if we can do that, we can slow this down.
The money supply? Where?
Their finances. Obviously, how can we slow down their money flow?
Well, that's the problem. They are financially self-sufficient for now. And that, see, the insurgents in Syria have been getting their money from the Saudis and from Qatar and places like that. But the IS gets their money from oil, from rackets, stealing, banks, other places. They're not getting much, if any, money from outside sources. which makes it hard to cut off the money because they're making money. They're making it like a state. They are a state. We have to face that right now. Are they using what? Yeah, probably the Iraqi dinar. I don't know. Next question. Yes, sir.
Good
Hey, Ken.
afternoon, Curtis. Good to see you. Thank you for getting my stomach a little roiled there, as usual.
I'm sorry not to bring good words.
Right. Yeah. There's an awful lot of things going on here, Arab to Arab, and about the only stability we really see in the Mideast is Israel. What is your opinion of Israel, and what is your opinion of Palestine?
I think Israel, it's fascinating right now. Israel has allies. Saudi Arabia, UAE, Jordan. Israel is very quiet, which is smart. I would bet that their intelligence is better than ours. They are watching IS every day. They have been working with the Kurds. They have a history like the Kurds in that they had no homeland and the Kurds have no homeland. So there's been a relationship between the Iraqi Kurds and Israel over the years. And there was even one report that some of those attacks at Guer and Marhoun, there were some Israelis in there.
So
I don't know.
Do you support the Israel-U.S. affiliation? It doesn't seem to be going too well lately.
Well, the current president hasn't been very warm for Israel. So Israel-Palestine, or mainly Israel-Gaza, is an endless fight. Those tunnels, that attack was to come on, not Yom Kippur, but whatever it was, 24th of September, the big Jewish holiday. Yes, thank you, ma'am. And Rosh Hashanah? Yes, that's right. And that would have been terrible. I mean, they already had the bombs underneath the kindergartens. They were out to kill children, get as many casualties as they can. They play the world publicity beautifully. Everything is, kill how many women and children you get, because you get more front page on the New York Times and on the TV. So Israel's in a tough position fighting with all that. But they finally decided to hell with us. They're going to do what they have to do. And Netanyahu told us that, don't bug me again. And so he's got a problem. But it's very interesting that, when you get down to it, one of the biggest problems all the way around is Iran. And that's the Israeli problem, Iran, nuclear business. It's the Saudi problem. Saudis are very worried about it. So if anybody attacks Iran, Israel will support it, Saudis will support it, several other places will support it. I don't think it's useful, but but it's an interesting alliance, which is a silent alliance between some of the Arabs and the Israelis. The Jordanians have kept the truce, the Egyptians have kept the truce, and the Israelis never had any problem with Assad because Assad basically kept everything also. They were happier with Assad than with some of the unknown crew that might come in. Yes, sir, where are we?
Over here.
Yes, sir.
And we're going to have about 2 or so more questions. And then remember, we'll stay open till 1:45.
Colonel Doctor, thank you for a comprehensive lecture and for your military service. I wanted to ask you a question about one of the chapters in your book, World War IV and Beyond. Is that better? Yeah. In your book, World War IV and Beyond, you have a chapter called Imperial Israel. And in there, you said, I'll quote, Israel is the tail which wags the U.S. dog on anything involving the Middle East. How did it come about that the mighty USA surrendered its sovereignty to a tiny little rogue state like Israel? End quote. Now, Pat Buchanan, who you also quote in your book, shares your view that American Jews in Israel exert a malignant and disproportionate influence on American foreign policy. William F. Buckley, after much reflection, condemned Buchanan, saying that
Do you
his
have a
writings-
question?
Yeah, saying that his writings were anti-Semitic. How would you respond to Mr. Buckley's assertion?
What did Buckley say?
He said Pat Buchanan's writings about Israel represented anti-Semitism.
Oh, I don't believe that. Let me go back to the first part of that. You raised the whole question of Israel. Wagging the tail, wagging the dog. I think that's a reference to AIPAC, the American Israeli, whatever the hell it is, Action Committee, Political Action Committee. Do you know why we went into Iraq? The neocons, and it was the Israeli influence that put us into Iraq. There is hardly anyone now who doesn't say that Iraq was the dumbest thing we ever did. And the reason we went in there, and we have a senator, which you can also quote in that book right there, because it's in there, I don't remember which page, who says, on the floor of the Senate, he said, "You stupid senators," and he's a senator. He didn't say stupid, he just said, "You know why we went into Iraq? Because of Israel." Now that's a senator telling the other senators. So if you don't think they don't have an influence on American foreign policy, then I don't know what else to tell you. How much influence? Varies with time. Good or bad? Varies with time. Right now, different time. Israel caught hell in the media for the attacks in Gaza. But when you stop and think about it, Gaza was a pretty tough subject. And it's hard to blame Israel for stopping them after all those missiles which were thrown into Israel. Would you like to have missiles thrown into Reno every other day or every afternoon, just as you're going out for your walk and you have to step back because there's another missile blowing up in your street? I don't think so. Next question.
We're going to have just one here, and then we have to...
Did I answer your question or not? No?
You guys can discuss it afterwards.
Here goes about a 20-minute one. Hold it short, Frank. Frank is good for half an hour. I know Frank. No, the answer is no.
Here agrees with the threat of radical Islam. I think everyone here agrees with the threat of radical Islam. Now, my question is, what do we do about the rest of Muslims in the world who are not part of the radical Islam? I believe we cannot afford to turn a struggle against radical Islam into a war with all of Islam in the world. Now, am I making a mistake in that? And if so, why?
Probably. Let me start off with, how many people have ever heard of Robert Spencer? Jihad Watch. I sent him a copy of the book, and he chewed me out for using radical, because he said, no, it's Islam at war with the world. And I said, I know, but I was playing to my audience and so on. And he's right. It is Islam at war with the world. The rest of them are what I call Minos. You have rhinos, Republicans, name only. Minos, Muslims in name only. And they are irrelevant. They are irrelevant. The problem being, if you are a moderate Muslim, by definition you are an apostate. And the penalty for apostasy is death. So you don't open your big mouth and say too much, because there are a lot of people who would like to help you disappear. So Islam is a very, very difficult enemy. What I refer to it as the greatest psychological warfare program, the greatest brainwashing in history. 1,400 years of brainwashing. And boy, is it hard to remove. So the answer is the rest of them are irrelevant. They don't have a say. We're not going to get a reformation in Islam. We're not going to get a new Islam that's just sweet and gentle and kind and nice. It's not in the Quran. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I'd like to bring it a little closer to home. I taught in an elementary school in southwestern Colorado, and they were always running exercises with the sheriff's department having to do with shootings on campuses. And one of them was explained to me. They had a lot of statistics. This was 5 years ago.
Had a lot of what?
Statistics on the number of Hamas and terrorists coming across our southern border then. And they were running exercises should our schools be attacked by a group that wanted to strike the homeland and strike real fear and terror by attacking a school. And so we now have really open borders. Do you have information on what our government is doing to protect us? Because I believe there are a lot of these folks coming across our border.
Do you think our government is trying to protect us?
I don't know.
If you find a good answer, please tell me.
Yeah, but there should be a plan.
There
are people coming.
In response to your proposition, yes, the members of Hezbollah and Hamas do cross our border. It's not hard. Any yo-yo can get across. We got 5-year-olds coming across. Why do you have to have anything better? We're going to get 30,000 more next month. We have enormous operations that work like that. The operations of Iran go all the way down into South America, down into the triangle down there. They work. You have large Muslim areas back in there. A lot of people that came out, mainly out of Lebanon, years and years ago. So you've got some people ready in South America to do it. So we do have people getting across. And it's easy to get across. We even have tunnels, just like the Israelis found. We got tunnels across our great southern border. So it's a problem. You're right. I guess we got another question. Yes, ma'am.
Jenny, you're going to have to keep it real short.
I
Because
will.
right.
Thanks, Ray. Colonel Hobbs, thank you for your service. I had a really wonderful conversation with Mark Amadei, who I absolutely adore.
Speak up.
And I had a conversation with Mark Amadei, Congressman Mark Amadei, a couple weeks ago, who I absolutely adore and love. And my name is Jenny Martinez, and I'm with the Northern Nevada Latino Alliance. And one of our top subjects is immigration reform. And one of the things that we talk about on immigration reform is there's a lot of facets to it. And you brought up the big subject that we're talking about. It's not just what's happening on our southern borders, in our states, New Mexico, California, Arizona, etc. We're talking about having reform for our northern borders, and exactly what you were talking about, where Christianity is almost diminishing. Because we don't have immigration reform in our northern borders, there's a lot of peoples that come in that have that are undocumented and that come without paperwork. And we was wondering, for the sake of America, I am pro-immigration reform because of different militia groups that are starting in the northern borders. I just wanted to know, where do you stand on that? Where do you stand on America fighting for immigration reform? And and I often have so many questions that I talk to senators and congressmen about it as well. Where do you stand on that?
I think Ray will get on my ear here real quickly. Immigration reform is a different subject from what we're addressing today.
I beg your pardon. Without new policies and procedures, the continuation of people having coming over our northern borders and not protecting.
I'm in favor of people who come to this country legally. We have a system for people to come here legally. We have lots of them. We have millions of them. I don't like people who come here illegally. Period. Any of them. Yes, sir. Have we finished?
For right now, but I know there's all kind of questions. I think he did a beautiful job. Isn't he a great speaker? Now, one of the things is he didn't get a chance to eat or anything, but one of the things, we have a little gift which we'll present to him later, and we're giving him a year's membership to the men's club, which and he's welcome to bring his wife along. That's not a big deal. The next thing I forgot to mention, just real brief, a couple of administrative things. And we're going to, before John speaks on a very important subject also, our next meeting is in September, and we have 6 judge candidates. And the theme of the meeting is Here Come the Judge, the DA. Here come the judge. It's a dinner meeting. And then if you look up here, there's also an announcement tomorrow that Adam Laxalt at Carolyn's house is having a fundraiser. And also you can pick up about the men's club, how to get to it, and see our website. By the way, all of you are going to be on the web and stuff, which are currently being broadcast, so no picking noses or things like that.
Hi, I just have 2 issues or 2 items to discuss. One's money and one's an announcement. If I give you the money, you're going to leave, and I'm not going to get my announcement in. Okay, so first, we have Adam Laxalt, Carol DiCarlo,